Can I ask you something? Can you trust your own memory? How much of your life could you honestly trust to be true if you were prone to constant blackouts and bouts of memory lapses? Among others, these are questions asked throughout the story of Martha's Dead. Giulia, our protagonist, greets us in her room. It's been many years since anyone has visited her. She wants to tell us, the audience, her life story, but due to her terrible memory, she's unsure as to where to start. Like any story, it's best to start at the beginning. The year is 1929. We hear a young Giulia speaking with her nanny discussing the White Lady of the Lake, an Italian folktale of a young beautiful woman who is said to have been hung by her lover after being accused of seeing another man. Now on foggy nights, she appears from the lake to drown other young women. She is seen as a symbol of sorrow and tragedy, and her apparition is said to appear to those who are about to experience misfortune or the loss of a loved one. Giulia feels a connection to the White Lady, possibly due to the world hating or being afraid of her. She is able to find some semblance of herself in this supernatural entity. As an audience, you may notice that only Giulia was sent to live with the nanny in this remote farmhouse out in the countryside in Italy. Where is her twin sister Martha? Back home with her mother and father? We're never really told why, but Giulia suspects it to have been the fact that Martha was always their mother Irene's favorite child. During this time in Giulia's life, she spent 30 years with the nanny. To Giulia, this farmhouse was her happy place, a safe space of sorts, even now during the final years of World War II. When at home in Germany, Giulia feels repressed, as if nothing she does will ever be perfect enough for her mother. This is our first hint of possible trauma experienced by our protagonist. I'll touch more on this later. Fast forward 15 years, it is now July 16th, 1944. The family moves into the nanny's farmhouse to escape the dangers of the war. We find Giulia in the woods near her favorite lake early in the morning, setting up her camera. There is a symbolic link between the camera and Giulia. Since an early age, Giulia has always had a terrible memory. Photography seems to be a way for her to catalog her life experiences and memories so she can take a look back on them later to recall the truth. As the saying goes, the camera never lies. It is, in a sense, what is produced by the camera becomes a part of the truth the observer chooses to see. It is similar to history where what is written down as fact can over time become what we believe to be true. In a sense, we as the outside observer to this story should look beyond what is presented and look for a deeper meaning behind what we see and what we hear. At least this is something I believe the developers want us to do. While bringing the lake into focus, Giulia spots something floating in the water. Rushing to the dock and jumping in, we soon realize that the body floating in the water is Giulia's twin sister Martha. Doing the only thing she can think of in her moment of shock, Giulia drags her sister's lifeless body back to the shore. We are given yet another hint to Giulia's story. When seeing her sister, a part of her had died. Now, when first playing this game, something about this line stuck out to me. Yes, most people would feel that a piece of themselves died with the loss of a close loved one. But remembering the main plot device of this story, the camera and Giulia's memory issues, it made me think that maybe this was a little more on the nose than one may first think. Giulia is soon found by her mother and father. Irene, mistaking Giulia for Martha, quickly embraces her. Still in shock and confused by her mother's strange behavior, Giulia stays silent and accepts the loving embrace of her mother, something she's never felt before. In this moment, she felt protected for once in her life. Without realizing what she had done and assuming her sister's role, Giulia vows to take Martha's place and live on as her sister. Will this lapse in judgment have irreversible consequences? Only time can tell. We pick back up in Giulia's story the next day, July 17th, 1944, in a viewing room with Martha and Eric, who is asleep in a chair, seemingly passed out from drinking away the pain of losing his daughter. Still under the assumption that the child lost was Giulia, Eric has always had a stronger connection with Giulia due to the two sharing a love and passion for photography. It was Eric that sparked the interest in cameras and photography in Giulia when she was much younger. We will soon see the stark difference in how the two parents grieve over the loss of one of their children. Irene is heard shouting for Eric, reminding him to light the candles around the casket and reprimanding him for not helping to get the home ready for visitors.
You can't stay here forever. Why don't you go to bed?
No. I want to stay with my daughter.
Your daughter? Your daughter? You have another daughter, you know. The one who's still alive. Remember?
What are you talking about, Irena? Giulia is dead. What kind of comment is that? How can you?
You should be thinking about Martha. Giulia harmed Martha. You know that, right? And as if that were not enough, she has now also abandoned her.
It's the same old story. Everything is always Giulia's fault, isn't it? Her fault for Martha being deaf, and for you being infertile. Do you think it's the right time for this? Giulia is dead, Irene. Dead. Someone killed her. Do you realize that?
Of course I realize. I get it. Do you think I'm stupid? No one understands it better than me. She always brought problems. Only problems. It would have been better if she hadn't been born at all. You're crazy.
We are shown how little Irene cares that one of her daughters has been suspected of being murdered, and more worried about what others will think of how she keeps a home. While playing through this game, you can see how 1940s Italy or Western society during this era has highlighted the societal pressures on women to adhere to more traditional gender roles with their harsh judgment of Giulia. Irene is described as someone who views Martha as the perfect daughter, polite, quiet, intelligent, and well-behaved. Compared to her sister, Giulia is the black sheep of the family in Irene's eyes. While eavesdropping on her parents' argument, we as the audience find out that Irene blames her for all of the family's problems and is actually happy that Giulia is dead. Her only regret is that with Giulia's death is how it affected her sister Martha. This in Giulia's mind confirms her thoughts that living her life on as Martha is what is best for the whole family, leading her to have trouble with sleep, leading to recurring nightmares. Giulia dreams of being chased through the woods at night, having to choose which path to take. According to the learning mind, nightmares of being chased in the woods can symbolize fear, avoidance, and feeling trapped. It reflects real-life situations dealing with choosing between different paths or having to face difficult decisions. Giulia forms the following sentences in her escape from her dream pursuer. Martha has lost her soul, and I stole her identity. Now, I'm no psychologist, but this seems that Giulia feels guilty for assuming Martha's identity, seen by Giulia skinning her sister's face and wearing it like a mask, completing the identity's assimilation. Or this could also be the game developer's subtle way of hinting to the audience that Giulia, deep in her subconscious, suspects herself as being behind her sister's mysterious death. The story tries to suggest that Martha's death may be more supernatural in nature by showing us the camera by the lake taking a picture of the White Lady entering the lake again, and assuming that either the White Lady was behind the murder, or that she was alluding to another death. The latter seems to be more on point, which I will expand upon in a later section of this essay. While researching the different motifs littered throughout this story, I came across a possible interpretation of Giulia's dream of a lake with a bloody dock. This could symbolize an upcoming period of tranquility or introspection. It could also be a warning of potential dangers or threats in the waking world. Something that OKA does very well with their story building is the ability to interweave such deep meaning into their story without throwing it in our faces. They trust the audience to look into the deeper meaning of the world they built, to go down multiple rabbit holes until we finally figure out what they want us to understand. This is something that you can only get from a small indie studio like OKA. Waking from a horrific nightmare, we the audience are introduced to the twins' room. Something that I noticed was that the room almost mirrored each other. There are a few items here and there that differ, but for the most part, it is almost a one-for-one mirror of each other. This is yet another clue into answering our initial question: can you trust your own memory? Before I just give you the answer, let's focus more on Giulia's story. Inside the room, hung on the walls, are pictures of the dark origins of childhood fairy tales. On Giulia's side of the room, we discover that a photo of Giulia and her friend, Lapo, is sitting out. Giulia hurriedly hides the photo in hopes that her mother doesn't find it. We later find out that Lapo is a local boy who is a member of the Italian partisans, which is why Irene doesn't like Giulia hanging around him and his friends.
We found more partisan tracks in the woods, right next to the house. That Lapo, I suspect he may be involved in the death.
We also find Giulia's journal. She explains that due to security concerns, the family moved from their mansion in Germany to the farmhouse in Italy. She has a weary feeling being back after so many years, Her once peaceful woods now give off an eerie feeling, especially when looking towards the lake. Giulia plays this off as the White Lady playing tricks on her. Something else to note is that Giulia states that she feels whole whenever Martha is around. What could she mean by this sentiment, I wonder? In this area, Eric is the Director General for conscripts and NCOs. He is in charge of overseeing the conscription process of the area he is assigned to, performing administrative, logistical, and ideological control for the Nazi German army in this area. This is why Eric and Irene think that Giulia's murder was politically motivated, and why Giulia is attempting to hide how close she is with the local resistance group. Giulia does want to mourn the death of her sister with her close friend. Even still, she just needs to find a safe way to do so. Exploring the rest of the farmhouse, we come across pictures depicting Dante's Inferno surrounding the entrance into the cellar. When I came across this, I fell into a research frenzy to find a correlation between Dante's Inferno and Martha is Dead, and boy did I find a correlation. While Martha is Dead doesn't directly follow the structure or themes of Dante's Inferno, there are some potential thematic parallels that could be drawn between the two works. Both Dante's journey through hell and Giulia's experiences delves into themes of guilt, trauma, and the consequences of one's actions. Giulia's descent into madness and her attempts to cope with the trauma of her sister's death could be seen as mirroring Dante's journey through the various circles of hell, each representing different sins and their associated punishments. Dante's Inferno is filled with the allegorical figures and symbolic representations of sin and redemption. Martha is Dead also employs symbolism, particularly through the use of folklore, superstition, and the recurring motif of the tarot cards. These symbols could be interpreted as representing Giulia's internal struggles in her journey towards either self-destruction or some form of resolution. Finally, both works portray a psychological descent into darkness. Dante's journey through hell is also a journey into the depths of human sin and suffering. Similarly, Giulia's experiences in Martha is Dead depict a descent into madness and despair as she grapples with guilt, grief, and a fractured sense of identity. Making our way into the cellar where the darkroom is located, we find a mysterious pool of red liquid next to a wine rack. Now, at first glance, one could suspect that someone had an accident and dropped a bottle of wine. But for my friends of legal drinking age, you'll notice that the liquid is a little too red and thick to be wine. Keep this image in mind for later, it'll all make sense, I promise. Moving into the darkroom, Giulia states, "Some used to believe that photos could capture the soul. I wish I could capture Martha's soul. It was believed during the early history of photography that cameras had the power to capture one's soul. It was suspected that this belief is why they would photograph the dead. Giulia's wish for this being true is in hopes of capturing Martha so that she is never truly dead." During this section, we jump back to the current Giulia from the beginning of the game. She wonders if she can rely on her own memory, as they start to feel more and more like a dream, questioning if everything that she is remembering is nothing more than a figment of her mind. She begins to question if she was the one that hurt her sister. In hopes to prove that she didn't hurt Martha, she wants to go back to the lake to gather the rolls of film from the cameras placed around the area. Something that stands out with this story Giulia's recounting in particular is just how jumbled around key points of views are. You can never truly find your footing because as soon as you do, the story kicks your feet out from under you to move you along at almost breakneck speed. Due to the murder, the doors to the home are now locked at night. We find Eric is more security focused now, sleeping with his service rifle next to the bed. While searching for the key to the front door, we happen upon something of Irene's that may play a key role in the backstory. Irene has Pevitin littered all over the house. What exactly is Pevitin? It's essentially crystal meth in pill form, I'm gonna be honest with you. It was a powerful stimulant that increased alertness, reduced fatigue, and suppressed appetite. It was widely used by German soldiers during World War II to help the troops stay awake for days, march long distances, and fight with increased aggression. It was also used by civilians, including factory workers, to boost productivity. While initially it provided a boost of energy and focus, Pevitin had serious side effects, including addiction because, crystal meth, psychosis, and even death. At first, it was available over the counter, but during the time this game takes place, it was strictly regulated to specific German units due to its addictive nature and harmful effects. Open the door, we see that tonight is a dark and foggy night, prime for the White Lady to appear on land like the childhood story Giulia grew up on. Usually, Giulia is fond of the night, but for some reason, maybe the fog or the recent death looming over her, this night fills her with unease. Walking down the footpath that leads to the lake, Giulia happens upon a lone German helmet out of place in this dark, quiet woods. While taking a photo of the helmet, undistinguishable voices can be heard.
German soldiers.
I think that this is Giulia's mind losing grip on reality. Pushing through the woods with the lantern Giulia is using to navigate through the woods, the flame is blown out. Upon relighting the wick, we catch the white lady running across our path. Both Giulia and the white lady stop, locking eyes with each other. Is the myth real? Or is this another figment of Giulia's fracturing mind? After collecting the third and final roll of film, we spot a candle with a strip of red cloth that looks all too familiar. We first noticed this fabric in the cellar. It was an extra bolt not listed in the receipt that Irene ordered. Does Irene play some pivotal role in this murder mystery? With all the rolls collected, Giulia needs to head back to the darkroom to develop her film. On the way back, she is grabbed by the white lady, starting another chase sequence, meandering left and right, jumping over exposed roots and ducking under branches and fallen trees. Giulia finds herself in a tunnel lined with human skulls from floor to ceiling with a red door on the far end. This is another instance of the story jumping from a recounting of events to a nightmare. The potential interpretation of this dream of a dark tunnel could represent Giulia's fear or repressed emotions, her mind trying to uncover a hidden aspect that Giulia doesn't remember pertaining to the events surrounding Martha's death. Opening the door, we are back in the viewing gallery in the farmhouse. We notice that our perspective is lower, almost like that of a child's point of view. This could represent Giulia being vulnerable. It could also represent her childhood being repressed or neglected, and her longing to reconnect with this inner aspect. We begin to start putting all the pieces of the story together in this dream. Giulia can be seen suspended from a noose with water pouring from her filling the room. This can also be interpreted as a symbolic death of something in her life. It can also signify the end of a phase and the need to let go because she is being suffocated by her emotion. And with the water pouring from her body could signify her feelings of being vulnerable and feeling exposed. Giulia also is sitting above Martha's uterus, cut open and bloodied, which could be interpreted as the death of a life that never was. To me, this is the story's way of alluding to Giulia having a miscarriage, which we can confirm in the next scene when Giulia wakes up from her nightmare in bed, blood covering her sheets and nightgown. Something that interested me during this wake-up sequence was the photo that Giulia took of herself from Martha. When we look at the frame, the photo is placed upside down. This photo takes on a chilling significance that the developers utilized to build upon the game's psychological complexity and unsettling atmosphere. It's a detail that encourages us to dig deeper into Giulia's troubled mind. The photo visually represents this distorted reality and fractured identity of Giulia. It's a subtle clue that something is off with Martha and Giulia's perception of herself. The inverted image also symbolizes Giulia's internal turmoil. The upside down photo reflects her mental state, her world literally and figuratively turned upside down by the tragedy. The photo, prominently displayed yet inverted, becomes a visual representation of Giulia's deception. It's a secret hiding in plain sight, much like Giulia herself is hiding her true identity. The upside down photo can also be interpreted as an omen, foreshadowing the further unraveling of Giulia's mental state. We listen in on an ongoing call between Irene and Father Don Attilio while trying to make our way to the bathroom to clean up. What we overhear is that more partisan tracks have been located in the woods behind the house. Irene suspects Lapo, a member of the partisans, was behind the murder of Giulia, but this is brushed off by the father due to his close ties to Lapo, vouching for his character. The conversation eventually turns to the topic of Giulia's behavior. Both Irene and Don Attilio suspect the true cause for turning down a dark path were the tarot cards introduced by the nanny, which Irene has stashed in her room. While searching for the tarot cards, Giulia finds the painting that her mother was working on. Now, what I'm about to discuss is purely subjective on my own interpretation, but I view multiple layers of significance. The painting reflects Irene's own mental struggles. As a German woman married to a Nazi officer in World War II Italy, she faces immense pressure and fear. The act of drowning Martha, possibly unintentional during a dissociative episode, further shatters her psyche. The painting represents her guilt, remorse, and descent into madness. For us, the audience, painting is a crucial piece of the puzzle that is Martha's dead. The painting also thematically connects to the game's exploration of duality and identity. The twins Martha and Giulia are mirror images of each other, and the painting visually reinforces this motif. As Giulia assumes Martha's identity, the painting becomes a symbol of her fractured sense of self and the blurring lines between reality and delusion. On a meta level, the painting represents the power of art to process trauma and express complex emotions. Irene, through her painting, attempts to confront her actions and their consequences. The act of creation becomes a form of catharsis, albeit a troubled one. Giulia also finds a letter from Martha addressed to the mother stating that Giulia is pregnant and to go to the lake on July 16th in the morning to see for herself. Giulia is unsure why Martha would lie about her being pregnant, but as we saw just minutes prior, Giulia did have a miscarriage, further detailing Giulia's fractured mind. As I suggested earlier, the camera plays a crucial role in this story, especially the IR film used to see what the eye cannot. Giulia takes a photo of an empty space between barracks and the cellar. After developing the photo, a mysterious message is shown. He who flees from the light hides behind it. Now, my interpretation of this message is that it connects to Giulia's distrust of her own memory and existence of Martha being real. My interpretation of this message is that it connects Giulia's distrust of her memory and the existence of Martha being real. It suggests that Giulia might be using the light, perhaps representing truth or reality, as a shield to hide her own secrets and the potential that she is responsible for the death of Martha. Giulia's fragmented memories and the ambiguity surrounding Martha's existence create a sense of uncertainty throughout the game. The line between reality and illusion becomes blurred, and us, the player, along with Giulia, are left questioning what is real and what is not. The quote could imply that Giulia is not only hiding from the truth, but also using the uncertainty as a way to protect herself from the potential consequences of her actions. The theme of duality is also reflected in the quote. Just as light and shadow coexist, Giulia and Martha represent two sides of the same coin. Their intertwined identities and the mystery surrounding Martha's fate further reinforce the idea that truth can be elusive and that perception can be manipulated. Overall, the quote, "He who flees from the light hides behind it," adds a layer of complexity to the narrative of Martha's dead. It highlights the themes of memory, identity, and the search for truth, while also suggesting that sometimes the answers we seek are obscured by our own fears and desires. In another journal entry, Giulia feels like a part of her has died with the death of Martha, further pointing to Martha being an alternate personality of Giulia, emphasized by Giulia not being able to remember what she was doing before setting up her camera and Martha's death, chalking it all up to another lapse in memory. Heading back to the lake for more evidence to Martha's death, Giulia watches a Nazi patrol chasing after Italian partisans through the woods. One of the partisans being chased is none other than Lapo. Giulia gives chase to see what's going on. When an explosion can be heard, it is discovered that Lapo had triggered an anti-personnel mine, dying instantly. Distraught at another loss of a loved one, Giulia finds a letter addressed to her hidden in Lapo's armband. Lapo is aware that she is alive and wonders why no one can tell the difference between Giulia and Martha. The use of the word "now" in his letter caught my eye and made me think that he knew that Giulia may be suffering from dissociative identity disorder, or DID. A shot is heard and Giulia slumps to the ground. She has been shot by one of the German soldiers that is chasing after the partisans. They soon realize they shot the general's daughter and leave her to die. As her consciousness darkens, Giulia has another nightmare. Running through the woods, the phrase, "Martha, I give you back your appearance," forms. And we see Martha and Lapo lying on the dock at the lake with blood raining down. Giulia removes Martha's face mask. This can be seen as Giulia coming to terms with reality and accepting the light, or the truth, and this is her first step to fully accepting her reality, the good, the bad. Another phrase is formed. "Now I see with my eyes." And the White Lady dragging Lapo into the water, which can be interpreted as Giulia seeing herself as both the victim and a potential perpetrator to Lapo's death. By having the White Lady, a figure of vengeance, target Lapo, Giulia could be symbolically suggesting that her own unresolved trauma might lead her to cause harm. If you stuck around so far, thank you so much. We are in the final stretch of the story. Trust me, it's going to get intense. The date is now July 20th, 1944, 9:15 a.m. Giulia, waking up from being shot in the stomach, notices that her mother had tended to her all night by the presence of a chair at the foot of the bed and the Peverton on Giulia's nightstand. Heading to the door to leave her room, Giulia overhears her father talking to the family doctor. Here we see another symbol left by the developers, a sparrow and a raven. Giulia's nickname, Little Sparrow, given to her by her grandmother, the nanny, symbolizes Giulia's vulnerability and innocence. Sparrows are often seen as delicate and fragile creatures. This reflects Giulia's own vulnerability and innocence, especially in the face of the trauma she has experienced. It highlights her youth and the fact that she is still dependent on others, particularly her nanny, for comfort and protection. Sparrows, while small, are also associated with freedom and the ability to fly away. This creates a contrast with Giulia's situation. She is trapped by her family's secrets, her grief, and her own deteriorating mental state. The nickname might hint at her yearning for escape and a life free from the burdens she carries. Ravens are often used in video games, and particularly in Martha's Dead, to symbolize a variety of interconnected thematic elements. Ravens are traditionally associated with death and the afterlife due to their scavenging nature and dark plumage. Their presence can foreshadow tragic events or create a sense of unease, contributing to the game's unsettling atmosphere. In Martha's Dead, the appearance of ravens could be interpreted as omens connected to Martha's death and the mystery surrounding it. The raven's dark symbolism can also be linked to themes of psychological disturbance and trauma. Their presence might reflect the protagonist's internal struggles, her descent to madness, and the blurring lines between reality and illusion. In Martha's Dead, the ravens could be seen as manifestations of Giulia's deteriorating mental state and her growing inability to distinguish between truth and fiction. While everyone moves Martha to her final resting place in the family crypt, Giulia has the urge to play the piano, something she hasn't done in ages. She doesn't care if anyone walks in on her, even though Martha, having never played because she was deaf, Irene walks in, realizing that Giulia was alive and that her beloved daughter Martha had died, and Giulia kept that from her. Giulia hears her mother verbally berating her and threatens to throw her into a mental asylum. Later, we find a telegram from a mental asylum in Tuscany that her admittance is already in process. We cut to Giulia back in her room after finding Martha's key to her lockbox. Reading a letter addressed to Giulia, Martha explains that she was never deaf and that the letter to their mother was to expose her to how she treats Giulia so horribly. Giulia travels to the dark room to listen to a recording Martha left her. Giulia sneaks into the family crypt to gather evidence of Martha's pregnancy. The following is a rather gruesome scene, so trigger warning is strongly advised. Using the tailor shears Giulia took from Irene's sewing table, she cuts open Martha's womb, searching around to find an underdeveloped fetus with a genetic defect. The fetus's existence is ambiguous. It's not entirely clear whether it's real or a figment of Giulia's imagination. This ambiguity reinforces the game's exploration of the blurred lines between reality and delusion, highlighting Giulia's fragile mental state. The fetus could be a product of her trauma, a manifestation of her fractured psyche. Returning from the crypt, Giulia confronts her mother, and here we experience what Giulia experiences when she has a lapse in memory. The only thing we hear is a gunshot, and then we come to with Irene on the ground with blood trailing behind her, and another blackout combined with another gunshot, which kills Irene.
Now I will wake her up and she will confess. You can bet on it.
What are you doing, my daughter? Why do you want to ruin your life?
I'm sorry. It wasn't me who just shot Mummy. It wasn't me. Dear God, what have I done? She forced me. She killed Martha. But who in the world will believe me now? They will take me to the mental asylum. Those rolls of film are my only hope. So that's who had the keys to my childhood bedroom. I could have guessed.
In shock, Giulia moves upstairs to call Donatello, who instructs her to come to the church in town.
Donatello speaking? Who is it?
Father, help me. They're all dead. Daddy, Mummy, everyone.
Giulia, come to me immediately. Don't stay alone. It's dangerous. Come to town. You can stay here with me and we can talk about everything, okay?
Okay, Father, but first I want to play with my puppets for a while.
Giulia, don't be silly. Come to church right away.
Giulia instead heads for her childhood room, now that she has the key that was missing the whole game. This is where all of our questions get answered. The answers are in the form of a story recounting via a puppet show. During Irene's childbirth, she experienced complications and had a traumatic delivery. Due to the immense pain, she is assumed to have become addicted to the drug Pavitin, confirmed by her continued use even to this day. Due to the side effects of the drug and what I can only assume is a form of PTSD and postpartum depression, she becomes aggressive towards young Giulia for the smallest annoyance. She eventually loses herself and beats Giulia with a cane.
My hands are not enough. You need to learn properly this time. Sorry, it was an accident, Mummy. Please don't hit me.
This is where I believe Giulia developed DID and Martha was created. Martha is Giulia's alter that is the perfect daughter, a silent, obedient personality. When Giulia and Martha are together, they form a whole. Giulia recounts another memory of Irene abusing her by killing the family dog and forcing Giulia to eat him before she is allowed to go, further traumatizing her.
I will put you in your place, girl. Sorry, Mummy. I won't do it anymore. I promise. Too late. These false tears won't help you. Now I'll make you want to bark. Leave my dog alone! There's no point screaming, stupid girl. No, Mummy, please. You're insane. Eat it. No! I won't eat him. I said eat.
Giulia recounts killing her mother, chopping her up, stuffing her into a bag, and burying her under the bridge by the house. Remember that strange bloodstain in the cellar? Told you to hold that memory, because it'll come back again, right? Yep, you're right. That was Irene's blood. After Giulia finally remembers her past, her reality, we come back to the real world, holding Irene's severed head. We take her head and dump it with the rest of her body. Coming back to the cellar, Giulia, overcome with grief and guilt after coming to the realization of what she's done and that Martha was never real in the sense of her being her sister. While the game initially presents Giulia and Martha as twin sisters, it's ultimately revealed that Martha is not a separate person, but rather an alternate personality of Giulia. This is a major plot twist that reframes the entire story. Several clues throughout the game hint at this. Giulia's memories and experiences are fragmented and often contradictory. She sometimes seems to be unsure of her own identity and past. There's a distinct lack of evidence of Martha's existence outside of Giulia's perspective. We never see Martha interact with anyone else, and there are no photos or other physical reminders of her. Giulia's mother's confession on the hidden tape recording confirms that Martha is a figment of Giulia's imagination.
What are you doing with your father's gun? It's dangerous. Stop it.
Talk. Tell me everything now. Tell me what you have done.
Okay. Calm down. I will tell you everything. I found that strange note when I woke up, and I immediately realized that something was wrong. Something was up with you, aside from your usual quirks. I came to check, but you weren't in your bedroom. You had spoken about the lake, and I got worried, so I called your father, and we went to see what was going on. We found you sitting in your underwear at the side of the lake. You kept saying that nothing had happened, and you kept repeating things like that. I hugged you to try and make you feel better, but you did not speak again for days. What is happening to you?
You should tell me what's going on. I'm not going to that loony bin.
I would never have wanted this, but I'm afraid you will harm yourself further. You were really hurting yourself in front of the piano that night. What else could we do?
You killed my sister and now you're afraid because I found out. So you're making up stories, aren't you? But I'm not falling for it this time.
What are you saying? Your sister? Please, no. I was not well. I didn't know what I was saying. So many years have passed. You were little then. I thought everyone had forgotten that nonsense.
Shut up! Don't speak. Don't say anything else.
What are you doing, my daughter? Why do you want to ruin your life?
I'm sorry. It wasn't me who just shot Mummy. It wasn't me.
Instead of Giulia playing the piano as she first recounted, it is discovered that she was harming herself instead. The game leaves some room for interpretation, but the strong implication is that Giulia developed DID as a coping mechanism for childhood trauma and her mother's abuse. Martha represents the ideal daughter that Giulia felt she couldn't be. This twist adds a layer of psychological complexity to Martha is Dead and makes it a truly unsettling and thought-provoking experience. We come back to the beginning with Giulia in her room at the mental asylum. We find out that San Cassiano was bombed and the church was destroyed, but she was already in the asylum before any of that ever happened. Her mother dying by her hands in the cellar and her father being killed was all in her head. She was never there when they died. Her mind had made up the entire story.
On the 26th of July, San Cassiano was bombed and the church was destroyed. But I was not there then. I was already in the asylum. Once again, stubbornly, I was not dead. The bombs hadn't killed me, and I had also survived myself. The most absurd test, and the hardest one. The war ended some time ago now, both out there and inside of me. I was on the wrong side of the gate, but now I can turn the page. Life is opening its doors again, isn't it? If I hadn't been so lucky to survive myself, I would have thrown everything away. We think that danger is all around us, ready to attack. But the most devious and misleading dangers are the ones that are inside of us. They grow without us realizing. They make us suffer, remain confused, and remove our self-respect. I would have wanted to ask for help, but I was alone.
We're left with one final quote from Giulia. "Now I'm ready to leave. How long will it take to get home?" This is deliberately ambiguous and open to multiple interpretations, leaving us with a lingering sense of unease and uncertainty. Acceptance and delusion is the most prominent interpretation. Giulia seems to have accepted her reality, however distorted it may be. She's ready to leave the asylum, believing she is finally going home. However, the question, how long will it take, suggests a disconnect from reality. She might not fully grasp her situation or the extent of her mental health struggles. The home she refers to might be a distorted memory or a fantasy, not a real place. This interpretation emphasizes the tragedy of her situation, as she seems at peace but possibly still deeply unwell. Another interpretation is a return to a familiar cycle, a cyclical nature to Giulia's experience. She might be leaving the asylum only to return to the same patterns of behavior and thought that led her there in the first place. The home she's returning to might be a place of dysfunction and unresolved trauma, suggesting that her journey is far from over. This interpretation paints a bleak picture, implying that Giulia is trapped in a cycle of mental instability. A less likely interpretation, albeit one that I hope is true, is that there is a glimmer of hope. Perhaps Giulia has genuinely made progress and is ready to reintegrate into society. The question about getting home could be a genuine inquiry about the logistics of her release. However, in this reading, the ambiguity remains. Is this hope realistic? Or is it a fleeting moment of clarity and a mind still struggling with delusion? Throughout the game, Giulia's reliability as a narrator is questioned. The final line reinforces that uncertainty. We're left wondering whether her perception of events is accurate, or if she is still trapped in her own subjective reality. The line serves as a final reminder of the game's exploration of memory, trauma, and the unreliability of the human mind. Ultimately, the ending of Martha's Dead is designed to be unsettling and thought-provoking. Giulia's final line is a perfect example of this, offering no easy answers but leaving us, the audience, to ponder the complexities of her mental state and the nature of truth itself.
This is my story. Thank you for being here, for listening to me.